For real, how far will Classic go? Before we start this video, guys, do you think they're gonna go all the way down the line of all the expansions? Because I've had a lot of people talk about like, oh, I'm really excited for like Mob. I think they might. It kind of depends on the reception of Cataclysm, I think.
Cons happened, and as many of us expected, turns out that Classic WoW will be going beyond Wrath of the Lich King.
We all know this.
The first 3 expansions in Vanilla, TBC, and Wrath were kind of a given that they would rerun their course, and whether that was for nostalgia's sake at first, revisiting raiding you missed back in the day, seeing how the classes were back then, whatever.
Oh my god, I just realized this, seeing this, there's gonna be goblins and worgens. I never did the Gilnea starting zone, chat. God, the dungeons got nerfed after 2 to 3 weeks. Okay. Well, I kind of hope they release them like unnerfed and then like go down the line like that, right? I'll see.
It was, they've all had their merits, and at times showed why certain things ended up changing too.
Okay.
Blizzard have also seen this moment coming for a while now, as have many of us. Cataclysm is a big changing point for
Really
Classic, and for those wanting to continue reliving more Classic experiences, there is Era, Hardcore, and most recently, Season of Discovery.
Something that actually could maybe be fun to try. And maybe that's silly, but it might be fun to try out to see if like Cata Hardcore would even be fun to do, right? Because it's a whole different, everything is revamped, right? I don't know if that would be enjoyable or not though. As a primary Horde player, I think the Worgen starting zone was awesome. Okay. Hardcore SOD. I mean, maybe, you know.
The choices have never been larger for somebody to find a version of Classic WoW they like, and I think this push for vanilla content over the last 6 or so months has not been any coincidence. No. But Wrath is soon to be wrapping up, and the future of the Classic expansions are only heading forwards. Yeah. So how far do you think they're going to go? Like, realistically though. I mean, even back in 2019, people were already joking that I can't wait for BFA Classic.
That would just be...
Or then Shadowlands Classic.
I don't know.
Or now Dragonflight Classic. Personally, I'm looking forward to the World Soul Saga Classic, but...
I mean, I don't want to, like, shit on other people's parade, because maybe there is some people that would enjoy that, so I don't want to, like, ruin it for those people that, like, would like that, because I kind of got the games I love to play, right? But it just seems weird to me, like, BFA Classic, right? Wrath is already over, to be honest. Yeah, I'm not, like, hugely excited for Obsidian Sanctum, personally. Oh, wait, Ruby Sanctum, sorry. When are you gonna get Shadowmourne? We gotta do a Wrath raid one day and get Shadowmourne. Like, it has to happen.
Games aside, Classic is catching up with retail. There is no doubt about that.
It is.
Whereas Vanilla to Cata originally took about 6 years between 2004 and 10, Classic has covered that same ground in 4 and probably a half years from 2019 to 2024. Depending when Cata actually comes out, that is. Yeah. The difference maker has been, nearly without exception, the duration of the final content phase of each expansion. From Wrath and beyond, final patches often went on for 9 to 12 months, sometimes over 1 year, looking at Mr. Pandaria and Warlords of Draenor there. And whilst final raid tiers are the culmination of the expansion with all the overpowered gear and us fighting the big end boss, given the choice these days, the Blizz devs aren't going to have us sitting on one patch for an entire year.
And it's just not fun. Especially with Classic content where it's so easily cleared. People don't want to spend months and months on just, you know, I don't know, Lax Ramas, right?
For anywhere near that long, ever. Unless it's Classic Era, I guess, but that's its own separate thing. I mean, take Ulduar, for example. It was one of the most hyped up and beloved raid tiers ever for Classic. And for many of us, it ended up feeling as though it went on for too long. And that...
Ulduar was fun, but... It's such a long raid to do every single week. Like it's a long raid.
Came out on January 19th and Trial of the Grand Crusader was June 22nd. And that 6-month time period does feel about as long as any major content patch can really go on for. And I think a big part of the content being faster paced is just that, on average, people get through stuff much faster.
And people get bored
it's a side effect of it being a re-release. You know what's coming, what to prepare, what the hard fights will be, which classes are going to go well, all of that.
That is why SOD, I think, has big potential, because it's new ground and it's new potential, like, areas within, like, WoW, right? Funny how people's opinions have changed so much about Ulduar. I think overall... if I would to be comparing TBC and Wrath of the Lich King, I actually enjoyed TBC as a whole a lot more than Wrath this time around. Back in the day, I enjoyed Wrath more, but at the second release, I actually had more fun with TBC overall, I would say. People talked about nostalgia and rose-colored glasses when Vanilla was announced, but Wrath is the most overhyped expansion ever. Yeah, I actually agree. I would agree with that. I think Wrath, for me, personally, is definitely the most overhyped there was. Vanilla, I love Vanilla. And actually TBC, I love TBC too. I think TBC is amazing, but Wrath is very, very nostalgia bait for me. Are you gonna get Shadowmourne? Yes.
That stuff. Back in the day, they had class
TBC
balancing.
was underhyped? Yeah, I actually agree. Yeah, a lot of people weren't that excited for TBC, but it ended up being quite fun. I remember the launch for TBC wasn't even that exciting on like Twitch or anything like that. People weren't like crazy hyped about it. I just hate all the slow walking in Classic. It is a walking simulator, but what can you do? Maybe that's why I like survival games and stuff like that.
A lot more fixes or updates to broken content and so on. People would have been playing a lot more and re-rolling a lot more too.
Yep.
The phrase flavor of the month re-roll really came into prominence during Wrath, and for a good reason. Also, I think a ton more people PvP'd back in the day as well, which is inherently a very replayable thing to do and doesn't...
I don't really find Arena that fun, man. Okay, maybe that, I don't know, dude. I think maybe I'm becoming old, but I don't find it that much more, that fun anymore, man.
Require this constant stream of new content, the same way that PvE does.
BGs
but
can
anyway,
be fun. Yeah.
We are, without a doubt, catching up. So how far does this journey go? Because we can never fully catch up, can we? Diverse as Cataclysm is compared to the original trio, it's still World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
This is probably one of the most consistent gaming franchises of all time. People have been saying WoW's dead or the next WoW killer is around the corner for years, and it just keeps on going. After all, what do you think would keep more people playing? Moving on to the next expansion, transferring characters across and carrying on with whatever expansion that may be, or Blizzard to come out and say, so yeah, go play one of the classic versions of the game, or I don't know, raid ICC forever, I guess.
I don't know what the
people
plan
who
would
prefer
be.
vanilla already have choices, and as popular as Wrath of the Lich King raiding is, I don't think that many people are going to be sticking around forever in ICC. So
I think the biggest potential for replayability in terms of like the classic games is always a vanilla fresh. That is something that will never go out of, like, you know, I think people will always be hyped for that. Every few years, if they just do a whole fresh server with no changes really, like not that many, and keep it like that, blast that, and then we also have SOD gaming. We're gonna be, you know, going into Classic Plus, keep updating Classic Plus with new stuff, and in the hardcore servers, I think that'll be a lot of fun stuff to do, man. For the classic enjoyers. Every time I see Cata revamp Westfall, I think about Guzu playing Iron Man and singing that. Okay.
will the Dragonflight classic memes be true one day?
Yeah.
In a few years' time, will they be posts and videos saying, you know what, Warlords of Draenor really wasn't that bad? Maybe
God.
there will, you know. And I'm going to go ahead
no.
and say something which I think makes sense, but I'm still not quite sure I fully believe it yet. And that is, I can see Classic going as far as Legion.
Okay.
As each expansion up to that point has enough merit to where enough players would want to re-see the content.
Maybe.
And it would be worthwhile for Blizzard to do. But let's go into it in a bit more detail for each expansion though. Why will they be worthwhile? And that means starting with Cataclysm. First up, it's going to be getting a few more features from later on in the game, such as an updated auction house, as well as the retail transmog system. Those are the two we've heard about so far. Cata will also trend towards more difficult PvE content.
A lot more difficult.
It's a middle ground where you don't just want the bosses to fall over, but you also don't want to be progressing for 2 or 3 months.
Oh god. I'm just thinking about the pucks. That's what I'm thinking about.
Twitch content.
Offer an environment where 10-player raiding guilds can exist and get the same levels of loot as 25.
Yeah.
There will be more challenging 5-man content too, and the whole Titan Rune dungeon system will be in Cata as well. The LFD will also now be a core part of the game. There will be rated battlegrounds for PvP enjoyers. I keep hearing that Cata and Mr. Pandaria were good if you mainly played WoW for PvP. And I mean, there's got to be a few people out there who prefer the updated world post-shattering, and the new quest lines and stories. But
I don't know. I'm not a big fan of that personally. I heard a lot of people say though that in terms of PvP, a lot of people swear by Mists of Pandaria being like goated, like actually like just the best, because everything was just so goddamn strong and every class felt so fun. I never personally played it, so I can't really speak much on that one personally. Big Say, thank you for the 21 months.
PPC.
Do you also believe that Cataclysm will be a bit of a stepping stone for Mists of Pandaria?
Okay.
Sort of how people called TBC that for Wrath of the Lich King. Because as memed on as MOP was back in the day, it really does have a lot of strong positives.
Yeah.
So what will people play Mists of Pandaria for? Monk, of course. Brand new class.
Oh yeah.
If you're a Monk main, do you want to go back and see how that started off? If I was, I would. There's class
Probably.
tuning, big reworks compared to Cataclysm. The talent tree's revamped again, and now we have 1 talent point per 15 levels, which are often modified depending on your spec. Also, a lot of class abilities and passives are specific to choosing a talent tree now. For example, if you want Fireball, you have to be a Fire Mage.
Yeah.
There was definitely a lot
big fan of
less
that.
choice in how you built your class and spec in Mists of Pandaria, but Blizzard essentially knew exactly what options you had, and because of this, they put a ton of power into every class.
Yep.
There was just something about Mists of Pandaria class design which felt as though everyone was overpowered, and
Yeah,
it
that's what I mean.
just kinda worked. Also, there was Vengeance tanking. This was probably the best expansion there has ever been to main.
Each time you take damage, you gain 1.5% of the unmitigated damage taking as attack power. Okay. Is that where like Gladiator stance was a thing?
Tank. So Vengeance in short means when you take damage, you deal more damage. And it was a way for tanks to keep up on DPS and of course threat generation. Now,
Is
this
that what those clips from Warriors just doing insane damage, like where they like just, I don't know, something crazy just went down with like AoE and stuff like that? That was Mob. I remember that it made tanks #1 DPS. Holy shit. Yeah, Gladiator spec.
mechanic existed in Cataclysm too, but in Cata, it's pretty tame,
I've never
and
seen
the
this
maximum
before.
attack power was capped at 10% of your health. And you know what they did in Mists of Pandaria? They made Vengeance a bit harder to stack, but they removed the cap, and tanks went absolutely crazy on DPS. It was not uncommon for your tank to be top DPS on certain encounters.
That must be so
in
fun.
fact, tanks would actively try to take more damage between their own cooldowns and externals to stack Vengeance as much as
What the
possible.
fuck?
Blizzard got rid of Vengeance and replaced it with Resolve in Warlords of Draenor.
Okay.
So Mists of Pandaria is the only expansion where tanks can realistically be your top damage dealer. And I think that's pretty exciting. And then there's raiding, Throne of Thunder and Siege of Orgrimmar especially. Mists of Pandaria had some great raids that I already know I'd definitely give a go again. I did quite a bit of Siege of Orgrimmar back in the day, but I didn't get the chance to see too much of Throne of Thunder. And people
I heard this was a great raid. Echo spent $60,000 on BOEs and Dragonflight, so you can go hard in retail and bennies. That is insane. Holy shit.
People rate both of these
Goddamn.
raids very highly. There were challenge modes too. These were kind of the early
That's kinda
adopter
cool.
for Mythic Plus, but they were very different from it. Challenge mode set your gear to a certain level,
This is
and
sick.
depending how fast you completed the dungeon, you got different rewards, such
I
as
like
a
this.
really good looking transmog set. Again, there was PvP as mentioned earlier.
Yeah,
I
that's
keep
cool.
hearing good things about Mists of Pandaria PvP, so I thought I'd bring it up here. There's also a big push for collection enjoyers in Mists of Pandaria. There are
I just feel like if you're collecting Andy, why not just play retail? Right? I mean, maybe people feel like they don't. Maybe people feel like it's easier to catch up now in like classic because they don't have like all those years of expansions. But I feel like the collection people just play like retail, right? Because there's so much more to collect. There's way too much shit on retail. Yeah, but classic will get to that point eventually if it keeps going. But maybe you feel like you wouldn't have to grind as much, and it would feel more graduate, right? Gradual. Yeah, I don't know. I wish we got a bit of mythic. We just need heroic and normal. Yeah, I can see the reasoning behind that.
So many things to gather out in the world. There's battle pets. I don't know, I kind of liked it when it was out.
Yeah, Pokemon,
Back
man.
in Mists of Pandaria, I came up with a strategy to use 2 pets and then level another on all the epic and legendary pet fights, and then I'd sell the ones I got to level 25 afterwards.
Yeah.
That was the main way I made gold back then. There was the Brawlers Guild, which had some challenging fights at the higher ranks.
That's kind of cool.
And when you didn't overgear them, those 2-minute enrage timers weren't
I like this. I never did too much Brawlers Guild. I did a little bit. This is really cool.
easy. The Timeless Isle. For me, Timeless Isle is the iconic zone with just the loads of stuff to do. And it worked so well, they kept doing it in future expansions. We had Tanan Jungle in Warlords of Draenor. I guess Broken Shore or Soromar for Legion. Nazjatar and Mechagon for BFA, and so on. There's going to be a bunch more too, but those are the things off the top of my head that came to mind for Mists of Pandaria. But we all know what happens after Mists of Pandaria. And this one will be the hardest stepping stone to get over in my opinion. And it's...
I will say this, chat, and maybe some of you guys are going to disagree with this. I liked VOD leveling. I didn't enjoy the game afterwards, but I actually, my first level, like playthrough of the levels were actually really good. I enjoyed the leveling that they did for VOD. I really liked it. But then after that, I got really bored. Right? What's up, Uro? Good to see you, mate.
Gonna get memed on
yeah,
so
I liked
hard
it a lot.
if it's announced one way or the other. Warlords of Draenor Classic. Imagine that. Looking back now, it's honestly comical how little content this expansion had. It released on October 14th, 2014, and Tanan Jungle, that's basically the final major content patch, came out on the 23rd of June 2015. There were 2 major patches in total, and 3 raids. I mean, what's not...
Wait. VOD was 8 years ago?
to like if there's so little content. For real though, I do think people will say that this expansion wasn't so bad in a few years' time. And there are things to like, such as the speed of leveling through Warlords of Draenor. It was super fast to get characters to level cap because of just the XP given in zones.
It was really good, I think, overall.
Bonus objectives. Even years later when I was leveling a character, I'd get them through Gorgrond in an afternoon and be done with the expansion. And you can't say Warlords of Draenor didn't have some absolutely brilliant raids. Highmore was okay, wasn't my favourite, but Blackrock Foundry and Hellfire Citadel were both very well looked back on. Classes got big overhauls again in Warlords of Draenor. This is the expansion when the big pruning happened. Gear also swapped main stats if you respect too. Well, your armor did anyway. Also, multi-strike was a thing for this expansion. I have to say I didn't mind garrisons at first, to be honest. When you were actually doing stuff to complete the buildings, filling out your stables and so on, it was okay. But like much of Warlords of Draenor, once you got over that initial bit of content, there really wasn't much else to do. And should Warlords of Draenor happen again, it would be a brief revisit to alternate Outland. That final patch they had was well over a year in duration, and it did not have much content to start with, so there just really isn't much to re-release. And in case you're thinking, no, I highly doubt Blizzard would try and put back in some of the cancelled content, such as the missing Netherstorm zone for one, which was...
Oh yeah, wait, what? Did we never... Because... Wait, we never got Netherstorm. We never went there, yeah. Cancelled Ogre Island. What? They just left the blank spot on the map. I mean, they do tend to do that. Gorgrond is Netherstorm? No, Gorgrond is Blade Edge, no?
Farallon. And to be honest, I don't think it would be worth doing for them. It would kinda have to come with new content, including a raid. And is Warlords of Draenor Classic going to be the most popular version of Classic? You can already guess the answer to that. But at the end of the day, what is something they'd probably kind of feel obliged to do to get to the next expansion? Legion. Legion with changes to some of its known issues could be a very fun re-release, you know.
THX for the great content. For the Horde.
Yo, Tissan, thank you for the 9 months. Thank you very much. Yeah, again, I heard a lot of people say Legion was very good after they fixed legendaries. I have really no opinion on this personally because I didn't really play Legion. I was playing Nostalrius and Chronos private servers, so I wasn't playing Legion at that point.
To address include legendary drop rates and bad luck early game. Some people got their Biss, some people got Cephas's secret. and Cephas was not good on launch. It got buffed later in the expansion, but launch Cephas, you did not want that. The artifact weapons pretty much locked you into one spec due to the artifact power grind. Never mind being ult unfriendly, Legion was respec unfriendly. That hasn't happened before in WoW. As Mythic Plus was a new piece of content, there was the endless Maw of Souls artifact power and legendary chant spam. Artifact knowledge as a catch-up was good, but it probably could have come a bit earlier, especially on a re-release. And overall, if Blizzard did re-release Legion and they were just a bit more generous overall with artifact power and legendaries, it could be a lot of fun. Yeah, possibly even have the resource to craft legendaries in from the first major content patch. Class order halls were a great and thematic addition to the game. I like them a lot, even if they did split the player base up to some extent. I mean, the alternative would have...
It's already got them split. I don't think the player base can get more split than it already is, but I guess the further down the line we get, the more split it gets, right? I wish they continued class halls. I think something that's quite important with the whole classic thing is trying to keep something a little bit fresh and new, right? Because that's the one thing that the classic kind of thing always lacked, is like new stuff, right? Because it is a solved game we're getting, which is why I think SOD has so much potential. Class halls were nice. I wish to continue the class halls now. Yeah, maybe actually.
Been just standing about in Dalaran, and we already kind of have done that in Wrath. Mythic Plus, of course, that was a new addition to the game, and it offered a different path for endgame players. It was repeatable content, infinitely scaling, suited 5-player groups. Just something different than raiding, really.
Mythic Plus is cool, I think.
Suramar has to be the best open-world hostile city Blizzard have ever made. And the story went on through there as we progressed in the expansion. We did big numbers in Legion, like damage numbers got completely insane. You'd be doing millions of DPS. Yeah, it was kind of dumb, but on the other hand, big number is kind of fun. Yeah. The Mage Tower was a great single-player challenge.
That's something I'm kind of sad I never got to do. I heard Mage Tower was amazing as well. Yeah, execute phase. Yeah, that like video as well. I never got to do Mage Tower. That I'm a little bit sad about.
Started off as a big flex, getting your hidden appearance early, and as the expansion went on, you could overgear them and get them a lot easier. Just overall an amazing bit of content to test yourself. A new class, can't forget about that one, Demon Hunter. We can see how they started off. There were also a lot of solid raids. The Emerald Nightmare was undertuned, especially.
I heard this is like one of the fastest raids that was ever cleared in the Race to World First. It took like a few days, I believe, if I remember correctly. It took wait, was it 20 hours? Wait, okay, I thought I was being, like, generous with 2 days. Okay, it was 20 hours for the whole raid.
Especially on Mythic mode. Trial of Valor was a bit unexpected, but posed a greater challenge. Nighthold was probably my favourite of Legion. Then afterwards we had the Tomb of Soak Garrus, which went back to overtuned again, before finally Antorus the Burning Throne. There were trinkets such as Whispers in the Dark, which gave you a crazy haste proc. Convergence of Fate would reset your class's cooldown super fast. Draft of Souls would just one-tap anyone in PvP with Battle Shout. All that good stuff. And it always felt as though there was something to do. There would be daily and weekly things to do, but we were kind of not as used to it yet, so it didn't feel bad. All in all, Legion was a big turning point coming off the back of Warlords of Draenor, and Blizzard would try to carry on some of the trends which seemed to make it successful in the next 2 expansions. But they didn't turn out so well. I think going beyond Legion is going to be a hard sell, as beyond this, not only were the subsequent expansions less popular from a player point of view, but some of their core issues just kind of didn't go away. First was that feeling of losing all the power you just had in Legion. Your DPS went from
BFA, dude. I had a good time. Again, I had a good time with BFA leveling, but after that, it was just I just got kind of bored, man. I think compared to BFA and Shadowlands, Dragonflight is a step in the right direction. Yeah, I think for me, I kind of just I lost a little bit of the WoW feel, you know. For me personally, like it's a whole other game than like the WoW I know, right? And I think for me, it kind of loses that vibe after like kind of Cata, Mob, and stuff like that. It starts just moving more towards a different game, right? BFA wasn't too bad, but they made an Assault so annoying. Yeah, with the with the ending as well. It got me so hyped about being PvP expansion, and the end it was PvP was shit. Yeah,
millions to about 10k or so at the start of BFA very early on. And it wasn't just numbers being smaller. Abilities were gone. Artifact weapons were gone. Legendaries were disabled. BFA was an expansion in name, but it felt as though we all went backwards. There was more reliance on daily, weekly, and even monthly tasks to boost player engagement, and if you fell behind, you stayed behind. Azerite armor had less interesting bonuses as whole when compared to legendaries and artifact weapons. Would essences feel better if they
It also sucks, as he says, it kind of sucks building up those legendaries, and then like at next expansion, oh, you lose everything, right? All the stuff that you build up. Same with the Heart of Azeroth, right? With the wounds and everything like that. Like, okay, once BFA is over, well, you just lose all the progress you made throughout the entire expansion with that little artifact thing, right? They also removed tier sets. Yeah, that's kind of shit as well, I agree. What's up, Tavellum?
Instantly account-wide when they came out, and even later than that in BFA. Do you want some random corruption BOE proc to count for more damage than all your class abilities put together? It just doesn't seem as though these systems are redeemable, even on a re-release. And then comes along Shadowlands with its covenants, its meaningful choices, and Blizzard's reluctance to back down on their vision, and that didn't go so well either. And I think a back-to-back revisit of BFA and Shadowlands most certainly is not going to be it. As for Dragonfly,
I think it definitely, like, looking at this, like going over the expansions as Willie is doing, I think with BFA, that's like the biggest change of like content. I think I for me personally, where I look like, where I'm like, okay, this is bad now, right? This is very different, right? Like Legion, I think still has like a kind of like a cool vibe and everything like that, but after Legion, it starts going downhill a lot, right? The first big change is Cataclysm, and the second big change is definitely like after Legion, I think. For sure.
Will it end up being seen as good enough to sit through these two expansions, though? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see on that.
Yeah.
The thing is, even if we do get to a point where there is Legion Classic, there are so many more questions to be asked.
Okay.
What happens to all the other versions of WoW we would have gone through?
Oh, yeah.
Is this just a one-time thing? Because right now it seems as though there's only demand for vanilla to be replayed on a large scale. Will these servers reboot as progression servers where they go through expansions? Maybe players could vote for when an expansion drops. This is what EverQuest have done with their progression servers. What about the level-capped characters in this environment? Where do they go? Do they transfer to retail?
It's very difficult.
Is there some kind of prestige system? Do we just force them to restart? At the end of the day, WoW kind of needs content to keep moving forwards. This is...
Yeah, people get bored very fast after like a few weeks or a few months of like the same stuff, right? TBC Reader would be fun. I would not be opposed to that, but I really think the biggest potential that there is Classic Plus. I think that is like the big juicer for like in the Classic series, right? The rest is like, okay, you get to Wrath, you get to Cataclysm, then so on and so forth, and that's fine, but it doesn't have the replayability that I think Vanilla has in many ways. TBC will be raid locking after the first 2 to 3 weeks. That's very much how WoW is in general. I think the reason why Vanilla is great in many ways is because there's a lot of things to do outside the raiding as well, which is why raid locking it will happen eventually in Vanilla, but it takes a lot longer to get to that point. We already did TBC. Very true. Yeah, very true. But we also already did Vanilla, but we got another Vanilla, right? But it's a hard thing to really say. I think for me the biggest thing is definitely the SOD stuff and the Classic Plus. In terms of like what expansions I wouldn't play, I don't know, man. I feel I would play Cataclysm. I probably would try Mob as well if they did that. I don't know. After Legion, that's where it gets very sus for me. I think that's where like I'm like, okay, is this really are we doing this right? We did Vanilla, we got another Vanilla, then another Vanilla, then another Vanilla. I love Vanilla, man. Vanilla raiding is boring, but I like the leveling and trying some fun builds. Yeah, I agree to a certain extent. I think Vanilla raids are fun when you're progressing. When you get to the farming stage of Vanilla raids, that's where it can get a little bit boring, right? But that's how it is with everything, I suppose.
Generally how MMOs work.
Yeah.
Apart from Classic Era, it seems, but again, that's a bit of a special case.
Yeah.
Equally, if things did get as far as Legion, by that point in time, the game has changed enormously. At the moment with Wrath, some people are going back to Vanilla due to the changes. More will for Kata, and things will keep going in that direction as we progress. Then again, a sub is a sub for Blizzard, and if enough people are playing to make it worth making, then it's going to make financial sense. They have said their surveys for Cataclysm actually turned out some pretty positive results when it came to people asking to carry on forwards. We may not have seen those results ourselves, but then again, so many things have happened in Classic just because enough people have asked for it.
I think if Cataclysm does well, they will keep going down the line. And then if the next expansion does well, they'll keep going down again, right? And they'll go from there.
Season of Discovery is also now underway, and I expect it to be very important in the future of classic content in terms of what people do and do not like about this season. But if there's one thing that's been true for World of Warcraft for nearly 20 years now...
Do you think they will make TBC SOD?
I don't think that's how they should do SOD. I don't think they should go like, okay, now we got TBC SOD, now we got Wrath SOD. No, keep it in the vanilla world and build on that world in a new way. I think that's how they should do it. Like Karasan Crypts, maybe like a Furball raid, maybe Grim Batol, maybe do the things in the world of vanilla. Don't increase like the, you know, don't go to Outland, don't do the things we've done. Do something new, right? Like, and like open up those areas that like we have in the vanilla world. We got Hyjal, we got Grim Batol, we got Uldum to a certain degree as well. We got a lot of places. We have the door behind Bale Gore in the Blackrock depths, right? There's a lot of cool things to be done with that, and I think that's how SOD should be done. They didn't do SOM TBC, so why should they do for SOD? Well, it's a seasonal thing, right? If you want Uldum, Hyjal, and Grim Batol, go play Cataclysm. Mufford, stop. I don't know. Just keep it in the vanilla world, I think, and do something we haven't seen before in like a new way. And I you know, we'll see.
It's that it just doesn't seem to go away.
Okay.
And I really don't expect Classic to either in one way or another. Anyways, just thought that would be an interesting topic to cover today,
video, actually,
because
from Willy.
Classic is seemingly set on a path to go a lot further than many people would have imagined.
Yep,
but
true.
how much further? That remains to be seen. What do you reckon, though? How far will Classic go? How many expansions would you want to revisit?
What do you guys think? Yeah.
And what would your ideal future for the game be?
I think in terms of the classic games like that, they're probably gonna keep going until like people won't play it anymore, right? So as long as people play it, they'll keep going. But I think they should focus a lot of the resources probably on like SOD and like perhaps Classic Plus, right?